Welcome to the Sharing the Faith podcast, where every other week we explore the beauty and power of faith in Jesus Christ, the light of the world. Now here is your host, Dr. Tom Neal.
Hello, I am Michele Kenaga, the Director of the Office of Faith Formation for the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, and this is a special edition of our Sharing the Faith podcast, meant especially today for priests and pastors and faith formation leaders and maybe some parents who may have some questions about this family catechesis that's being implemented in our parishes. So I want to thank all of you for joining me today. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with a former professor of mine when I was getting my Master's of Theology at St. Joseph's College of Maine, Dr. Carmina Chapp. She is the Dean of Theological Studies at St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Pennsylvania. And when I took her classes on sacramental theology and foundations of religious ed. And those two classes completely changed my outlook on both of those very broad subjects, changed the way I looked at faith formation from a teaching perspective, and changed the way that I looked at our sacramental life in the church. And so when I learned that our diocese was shifting to the restored order of the sacraments and also going toward family catechesis, I knew exactly who I would reach out to for guidance and for help, honestly. So today she's agreed to come and speak with me and with all of you specifically about family catechesis today, a little bit about it, its purpose, and maybe to share some of her thoughts and advice with us today. Dr. Chapp, so good to be with you.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to see you here today. So as we've talked already, you're aware that we are moving to the restored order. And so along with that, but also very separately, is this thought of family catechesis, of family faith formation, a way to, I believe it's a radical shift of parish culture. And so as we get into the questions, I have my questions so we don't get too far off of the track. I think that of some of the terms that I'm hearing being thrown around, and when I'm talking to pastors or to faith formation personnel, there's some terms that I think some parents may think, what is that? I've heard that. What is that? And one of those is domestic church. So this concept of the domestic church, what if you could explain it maybe in everyday terms of what is it and why are we hearing about it with family catechesis and why is it so important in this endeavor?
Oh, sure. The domestic church is, it's a phrase that we see in the Vatican II documents, Lumen Gentium. St. John Paul II always talked about the family as the primary unit of society, the primary social unit. So the family is extremely important in all aspects of our lives. We know that. So this term referring to the family, domestic church, is referring to the church domestically in the home, in our families. So if we understand what the church is, or who the church is, really, the church is the body of Christ. So the church, like the big church that we know, we go to church, we're part of a large community, is the place and the people that make Christ present to us. And so we kind of bring that down to, well, Christ has to first and foremost be present in our families. So the domestic church is a way of understanding the family, really. It's less about how we understand what church is and more about how we understand the family as being one of these integral places of where church is present. And it is. So what does that really mean for us in our family life? It means, okay, if I'm a member of the church, if I am a believer, if I believe that Jesus Christ has risen from the dead, has conquered sin, has saved us from the power of sin, and it's within this church community that power is given to me through the sacramental grace primarily, then this is the place too that I am to be Christ to the world. Like I'm supposed to go out from that community and share this good news that we've been saved from the power of sin and bring more people into this relationship with Jesus Christ. Well, the first place that happens is in the family, is in the home. So we understand our families differently when we have this concept of domestic church. Here in my home, where I as parents, or we as parents have the most influence, the most responsibility, the most control, if you want to use that word. I have to be very conscious about the fact that I'm making this place, this house, this living room, this kitchen, a place where Christ is made manifest. And primarily that is done through the love that I show my family and how I teach my children to do the same. So it really is just a place of love and a place of understanding that this is the first kernel, the first place of this big church. There is a bigger community out there, but we're all connected first in the family.
Nice. And I know that we had talked before, and I have taken some of your things that you said before, and it's been very helpful, that mentality of, if it can happen in the home, then that's where it needs to happen. Mm-hmm. If this part of faith formation can happen at home, this is the most appropriate place for it. And if it needs to happen in the parish, then it should be happening in the parish. And so that concept is very important. As I've talked to some faith formation people and pastors, it's been very helpful to them. So thank you for that. That's very helpful to understand how it's not enough just to have our parish. We have to create a Christ-centered home for our families. And this is because this is where we live. There's 168 hours in the week, and 167 of them we spend as part of this home. And so it's important that the home is where Christ is center of our lives and where we go out from the home to live and serve. So good. Thank you so much. And then the second question that we had today was, when we think of this as parents as primary catechists, the primary teachers of their children, all tying into the domestic church also, how can parishes effectively involve the parents as primary catechists? Because what I'm seeing is that rather than just outsourcing to the traditional drop-off model, where we've got this end, this extreme, where we drop off, we do everything Jesus here during this hour, and then they get back in the minivan and we go home and we're done. And then the other thing I'm seeing is a little bit of is, well, since family catechesis is a thing now, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this in the classroom and we're just going to send it home with the parents. And so I think that's maybe not what family catechesis is. And I think that maybe there needs to be some understanding as far as how do we effectively help parents be that primary catechist. It doesn't mean recreating a classroom at home, but how could we expand on that to help them?
Good. That's a really good question, because family catechesis is not homeschooling. It's not like, okay, instead of sending my child to a school to learn to read, write, I teach them at home how to read and write, and I give them what I want them to read, and I give them the math problems I want. Catechesis is really only one part of a larger area called formation. So family faith formation has to happen in the home and be supported by the parish. And then catechesis is only not a small part, but a part of the larger whole, of a bigger picture of there's the catechesis, but then there's also, first before that, even prayer, the spiritual life in the family, and service, and loving others and helping others. And that begins in the home. Help do the dishes, help grandma with the leaves in her yard, and the service element of our faith. But then really before all of that, we have to have healthy human relationships. We have to be healthy psychologically, physically. It's all connected. It's all connected. So you can't just take the mindset of, all right, what they're teaching there, I'm going to teach here, even though I'm really not trained to do that. Like I don't know how to teach math, so I'm not going to teach my kid math. I'm going to send them to school. I don't know how to teach religion, so how am I supposed to do this at home? It all starts really with this whole package of formation. So if we're thinking of it in that way, okay, where do we start? Well, a parent has to start really with their own prayer life. They have to look in the mirror and say, what do I believe? What do I believe about Jesus? Does it really affect my life? Does it really affect the way I approach life, the way I live my life? And do I love Jesus? Like I'm told Jesus loves me. Do I believe that? And do I love him back? And what does that look like in my life? And when we're honest with ourselves, then we see, well, how do I have to work on my own spiritual life first before I can even share it with my children? If I'm already in a great place spiritually, I'm like, I love Jesus. I love this church. I appreciate the sacraments. I want to share this with my child. Well, that comes first. That own personal love of Jesus, own personal relationship with Jesus, and appreciation of the sacramental graces that flow through the church, and how I need those to actually go out and love my neighbor and do these acts of service, acts of charity. I start with my own personal relationship with Jesus, and I want to share that if I love it with my child. So then we have to try to teach our child something. Well, what do we teach them? We teach them, it's not unlike telling your children stories of your own childhood or your own family, like your grandparents did this and your ancestors did that. And if Jesus is this intimate friend that we know and love and that we utterly depend on for everything, we want to share with our children stories about Jesus and stories about the way he's affected our own lives. And look at all the other lives he's affected. Look at the lives of the saints and how they depended on him and leaned on him in hard times and in good times. And look at all the wonderful things they were able to do. We share stories about a person that we love. And all of the doctrinal stuff, it all flows out of that. We don't even understand that stuff unless we know the person. And we don't care about that stuff unless we know the person. The child's not going to care about like the life of like they're some athlete unless they actually like that sport and love that athlete, you know. So they have to know Jesus first. So I would say to not be intimidated by family catechesis, like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to teach my kid, but be more challenged to grow in your own faith as the parents in the family. And then that God will help you and show you how to communicate that to your children. So I hope that helps. That catechesis is really just one piece of this very large puzzle. And it becomes easier and easier as we pay attention to that other piece, to that prayer life and that relationship with Jesus life.
Right. Very good. And I think it's very important that we look at family catechesis, family faith formation. It's not just another program. Like it's an entire model of ministry that is different. It is a new way of empowering and equipping our families to go home and really live out their faith in ways that makes it easier for them to share with their children. I was talking with someone about how the difference between, we don't want to just go set up a classroom at home, to teach them, take it and bring it home. Because we think about as parents, we're teaching our children all the time without workbooks, without worksheets. Like I think about when I would teach my children how to brush their teeth or how to tie their shoe. I did not sit down with them first and on a whiteboard explain to them and give them a worksheet, right? Like there was this, we did it together and we showed them and we told stories about, well, this is what's going to happen if you don't brush your teeth, right? And this is how you tie your shoes. And so walking with them through this journey, I think equating that to the way that we bring Jesus into our lives just as intimately and not relegated to a worksheet or a whiteboard or things like that. I think it's important also, very good to make that the focus and not classroom, not books and worksheets. There's a time for that, but in the daily living is not the place for it. So next thing is for the pastors. So as I talk with people and talk with them and then talk with the faith formation people, talk with parents, their role in this is just becoming so clear to me as so important. Like what they do is so irreplaceably important. And so I want, to encourage them and also to help them to know how important it is. And so if you could share, like, how does their input and their investment in this shape the outcome in the culture of their parishes? What does their role here and how important it is and why it's important for them to be so invested in it in order for it, I don't want to say for it to work, but really for it to be shaped the way that we want it to be?
Well, it's essential for so many reasons. It's also extremely challenging. And I really have a heart for the pastors who are moving in this direction, because they're taking on a much broader project than what textbooks do we order for our catechetical classes. What they have to be ready for is to have personal relationships with all the families. Every family is unique. Like our families in our parishes, they're so diverse, on so many levels. Like spiritually, they're all over the place. Academically, they're all over the place. Economically, they're all over the place, right? So and even if you're in a very homogenous parish, everyone is unique. Everyone has their own relationship with God. So you're dealing with people on a broad spectrum of a parent appreciation for family faith formation at all, and for formation at all. So what the pastor's responsibility, it's kind of like the grandfather of the family. He's got a bunch of kids with all their families, and he wants to make sure that they have what they need to be adults and to pass on this faith that is beautiful, and to provide those things that only he can provide. So that means kind of figuring out, well, this family, family A over here needs this. Family over here needs a lot more. They need this. They need this. You're going to be fulfilling a lot more needs than before, because before you were just deciding what books to do and what catechists to have teach. There's a lot more personal relationship involved in this model. It's not a model. It's a way of life. It's a whole way of life, but it's also what your parishioners want. It's what parishioners, they want their pastor to know them. They want that. They want to be recognized. They want to be seen, because the pastor represents Jesus. We have to really take that seriously. The sacramental life of the church is something that families can't do for themselves at home. Like we talked about that subsidiarity before, where if it can happen in the home, it should. And families can provide a lot of different things for themselves, some more than others. So the pastor has to have an eye to that. Okay, that family's okay over there. They kind of have the basics down. They know what they're doing. This family doesn't. They need my help. They need the parish's help to get started, or to learn how to pray a rosary, or how to do the breviary, or whatever they're going to be doing. Like, some will need more help than others. And that's where the parish comes in. That's where the pastor comes in to help discern these things. But then there are some things families can't do in their home. They can't have Eucharist. They can't have Mass in there. They couldn't bring a pastor there. But you know what I mean? The sacramental life is where in the parish that happens. So that's something they have to come to church for. They have to come to the parish for those needs. So as a pastor, you're really looking at what are the spiritual needs of my family prior to the educational ones. And the educational ones will then be linked to those spiritual needs. So the greater the spiritual need, I don't want to say the less the intellectual ability, but there's like a lesser capacity to really absorb and understand the academic side, like the catechetical side, whereas someone who's more formed spiritually may actually appreciate something on the Trinity and appreciate that intimate relationship among the three persons, and being a part of that. So for the pastor, their role is essential. They're not just holding together a program. They're actually engaging in relationships with all of these different people. And that's hard. That's really hard. So with that in mind, the parish has to be ready to support the pastor in this, right? The people have to love their pastor and let him love them. And that's a really hard thing to do, because he's going to model this unconditional love. He's supposed to be modeling this unconditional love, which we are to be modeling in our families, like with our spouses and with our children. And it has to be witnessed to in order to make it believable. No one's going to believe Jesus when he says, love your enemies, if they're not seeing it in their home. Mom and dad are screaming at each other all the time, and Jesus says, well, love your enemies. And the kid's like, I don't see it. That's not credible to me, right? So it's a lot more than just what do we teach. The pastor has to help families discern for themselves, even where are they at in this, and help them to grow and help them meet each other to help each other. Even it's like grandpa having everybody come home for the family reunion every week. There's a pastor near me at every Mass, before he even says the sign of the cross, he says, welcome home. It's like your home. This is your home. This is where the body of Christ resides.
I love that. And you answered my next question, which was, how can we as parishioners and as families and as diocesan workers as well, how can we support the priests? And I know that we've talked about that, privately in other conversations. And I can say that our pastors are wonderful. They're so good they really do want what's best for their people. And they are so earnestly seeking the good for them. And so it's been so great for me to travel and see. I'm traveling again tomorrow. And so I look forward always to see them, because they do want so badly to do this. And every parish is different and every pastor is different. So the way they implement it is also going to be very different. And the way they relate to their parishioners is going to be different than the parish next door. So very good. That was very helpful. Thank you. And then also, as we talk about family catechesis, it's all this hypothetical, this is what it's going to do, this we're implementing, this is how it's going to work. The reality is there's going to be challenges. There's going to be some challenges that come up. There already are, and we're already addressing those as best we can. Some we can and some we can't. So some we have to live with. And so that brings me to one of my final questions, which is, what do you see as the biggest cultural obstacles facing the family faith formation, family catechesis endeavor, and how can pastors and parish leaders respond to those?
I think the biggest challenge is our culture itself, our secular culture itself. More and more, we come, the closer we grow to Christ, really, the more we realize how countercultural it is to be a Catholic, to be a Christian, but especially to be a Catholic because of the sacramental life that we have. It's just, we're weird. And this is the struggle that parents face. I don't want my kids to be weird. I want my kids to fit in. I want my kids to have friends. I don't want anyone to make fun of my kids. So they're kind of like, well, we want to love Jesus. But then in the day to day, they're going to watch that show so they know what's going on. So when they go to school, they can talk about it. They're going to play that sport that takes them away from their families 5 days a week and never has dinner at home. Like, they're going to participate in the secular culture because they love their kids. And that's, I think, is the biggest challenge that can only be overcome when there's enough families that simply say no to that and find each other and like have fun with each other. Like they socialize with each other. They play games with each other. That's the secular culture itself is our biggest challenge, because we always have feet in both worlds. But the way to overcome it is prayer, is to grow closer to Christ. And the closer we grow to Christ, the more abhorrent the secular culture is, the more we do feel the need to protect our children from it, as opposed to saying, I want them to participate because I don't want them to make fun of. We don't want them to participate because we see how dangerous it can be for them in all sorts of ways, physically, mentally, spiritually. So until we as adults come to that just adamant decision, there's stuff out there that is not good and I don't want my kids involved in it. And I'm willing to say no. I remember when I was a kid, it was showing my age, I guess. Malls were new, like the shopping malls, the indoor shopping malls. They were all new. Now they're all closing. But my parents, it was a cool thing to do on a Friday, Saturday night, go hang out at the mall. All the teenagers went and hung out at the mall. My parents never let us hang out at the mall. We weren't allowed to be mall rats. And I would complain. My mother still reminds me. I would complain, Mom, why are we so weird? Or we're weird. And she's just laughed and laughed. But now, as an adult, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that my parents had the foresight to see this. This might not be bad in and of itself, but it's a culture that is pulling me away from my family. And so my parents are not the primary influencers in my life. And that's, so there's two things going on there. In our culture, we have all this social media, and they're highly influential in our children's lives, right? Everything they see. So we have to like limit that, take that away from them. But also parents become afraid to become the influencer in their children's lives. And I feel that. It's like you're afraid almost to say anything because it's just a scary place, right? This is where our relationship with Jesus is so essential, because he will lift that fear. He will make you fearless. He will say, this is what real love is, and go and give it to your kids and save them from this evil that's in the world. So that's a long way of saying the culture is horrible, the church is beautiful, and we need to cling to her.
It is the culture. You're right. The culture is, I think, the culture itself is our biggest obstacle and enemy most of the time. And I know as parents, it's hard. I saw it in the classroom with the social media, the cell phones, all the good parents that it's that tearing between, I want what's best for them, but I also want them to fit in. And it's
Right.
hard. It's hard to be a parent. And so I think
absolutely.
that it's a big job for everyone. This family formation, it's huge. It is a new way of living, and it's a way of bringing Christ into the homes and creating these Christ-centered homes for our families. It's the only chance our children have, really, to keep the faith and to bring it forward with them. So I want to thank you today for your time to speak with me. Every time I talk with you, it's just so wonderful. I hope it's not the last time, maybe not even the last time that you're here talking to us. But also want to thank everyone that's watching, our Sharing the Faith audience. Join us again in 2 weeks for another edition of Sharing the Faith, which is a production of this diocese, the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. And until next time, may God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Sharing the Faith podcast. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit ptdiocese.org/sharingthefaith. If you listen to the audio version through an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave a comment on the episode. Thank you for listening.